Hello everyone. Today I will talk about the film Careful What You Wish For. A guy falls in love with the beautiful wife of a successful banker, but he will soon find out the truth about her.
You didn't want to do that.
Doug and his parents come to their country house for vacation. They are going to live in this small town all summer. Doug meets up with his childhood friend. Carson is happy to see his friend. He tells him that they should find girls this summer. Carson is sure that they are the most promising guys in the city and finding girls will not be difficult for them. But the first girl rejects Carson. Doug returns home and looks out the window and sees new neighbors. A beautiful girl and a rich man buy a big and expensive house. Doug can't take his eyes off the girl. Soon he and Carson are taking the old mattress to the dock. Carson hopes they will use this mattress a lot this summer. Doug comes home and his father asks him to come over. Their new neighbor, Mr. Harper, came to meet them. During the conversation, Mr. Harper talks about his boat. Doug immediately notices that the boat needs repairs. Doug's father says that their grandfather was a sailor and taught Doug a lot. Mr. Harper offers Doug a job. He will have to repair his boat and maintain it. Doug agrees. Doug walks up to the boat and begins to inspect it. But at this moment, he notices Elena. Doug can't take his eyes off the girl, but is interrupted by Mr. Harper. The man promises to pay the guy $10 an hour. Mr. Harper says that tomorrow afternoon he is leaving for another city and will not be home for several days. In the evening, Doug hears strange sounds from a neighboring house. He sees through the window how Mr. Harper beats his wife. The next morning, he comes to check his boat. At the entrance, he is stopped by a guard and asks to leave a signature in the visit log. Doug asks the man how he became so successful and rich. Mr. Harper says that he is not afraid to take risks and sets high goals, and only a risk taker can achieve such success. Soon the man leaves the city and Elena is left alone in the house. Doug notices the girl driving away in a car and a few minutes later hears her scream. He runs to help and asks what happened. Elena explains that there is a huge spider in her car and she's afraid to be in the car. Doug finds a small spider and kills it. Elena thanks the guy and tries to start the car.
Elliot's gonna kill me.
Doug comes to work at the bar and tells his friend what happened. He doesn't understand why Elena is flirting with him. In the evening, Doug comes home and meets Elena. She lost her house key and doesn't know what to do. Doug decides to help the girl. He examines the house and finds a window through which he can enter the house. It starts to rain, and Doug must quickly figure out a way to open the window. Elena's clothes get wet, and because of this, she can't concentrate. Doug takes a rock and breaks the window. He climbs through the window into the house and scratches himself on the broken glass. Elena notices a cut on his body and decides to help. She treats the wound and thanks for the help. Doug gets ready to go home, but remembers Mr. Harper's words and kisses Elena. She didn't expect Doug to do this, but she kisses him back.
You didn't want to do that.
In the morning, Elena says that Doug did everything well last night, but she asks him to leave and not tell anyone about it. Doug returns home, and he is very happy. He meets with a friend and talks about spending the night with a girl, but does not say her name. But Carson still doesn't believe him. Several days pass. Doug thinks about Elena all the time and dreams of meeting her. One day, Elena comes to the pier to check how Doug is doing his job. She asks him to come inside and close the door. The next day, Mr. Harper returns home, but Elena continues to cheat on him. The girl wants to do it right on the porch of the store, but Mr. Harper decides to go out for a smoke. Elena manages to get dressed and stop her husband. Mr. Harper checks his boat and is pleased with Doug's work. Soon, the man leaves town again, and Doug comes to Elena. He notices a tattoo on the girl's leg. She says that she was very much in love when she got this tattoo. Elena gives Doug a phone so they can communicate with each other without her husband finding out about anything. They go downstairs and kiss, but he stops because he notices the gardener at the window. Mr. Harper returns the next day. He waits for Doug at the boat so they can swim together. Doug is afraid that the gardener told his boss everything. Mr. Harper notices that Doug is acting strange. The man asks the guy a lot of questions. He asks him about his personal life and whether he had a girlfriend. Doug answers all questions. Mr. Harper leaves and Elena tells him that she hates her husband. She wants to leave him, but he is too powerful and she is afraid of him. That night, Elena calls Doug and asks him to come to the hospital. The girl told her husband that she wanted a divorce, and for this, he beat her. Elena says that her husband flew to another city for 2 weeks. Doug wants to tell the police everything, but the girl stops him. She says that her husband might kill her if she presses charges against him. Several days pass. Doug's parents begin renovations. At this time, Elena sends him a photo and wants him to come to her. But Doug takes her to his secret place and invites her to try out the mattress. Elena says that soon they will have to leave, and Doug understands this. Doug comes to work and meets his best friend. Carson found women's underwear in their secret place and apologizes for not believing his friend that he had a girlfriend. In the evening, Doug comes home. Elena secretly snuck into his room and says that she needs help. Her husband returned and beat her again. Elena asks Doug to promise that he will be with her no matter what. Doug enters the house and sees Mr. Harper's body. He tries to help him, but the man turns out to be dead. Elena says that he attacked her and she hit him on the head with a fire extinguisher. Doug wants to call the police, but Elena is afraid that she will go to jail. She says no one will believe her. Doug comes up with a plan. He puts the man's body in the car and drives to the pier. He sneaks onto the boat unnoticed and changes into Mr. Harper's clothes. Doug sets sail on the boat and lights a cigarette to keep the guard from suspecting him. Doug sails far from the dock and hits the man against the mast, after which he sets the boat on fire. In the morning, the police find Mr. Harper's body on his burnt boat. Doug hopes everyone thinks it was an accident. The sheriff begins an investigation, but he is sure that Mr. Harper himself is to blame for his death. Detective Angie comes to town. She must investigate this matter. The woman tells the sheriff that after Mr. Harper's death, Elena can receive $10 million. The insurance company wants to make sure it wasn't murder. The sheriff doesn't like that a woman will boss him around, but he is obliged to help her in the investigation. The detective interrogates Elena again. Meanwhile, the sheriff meets with the pier guard. The security guard says that he saw Mr. Harper's boat sailing away, but he was not driving it. Someone dressed up in the dead man's clothes and set up an accident. The sheriff begins to realize that it was a murder. The sheriff asks the security guard to go with him to the station, but on the way, they stop at the gas station where Doug works. He approaches the guard and inquires about the progress of the investigation. The sheriff notices that Doug is acting suspiciously. The sheriff and detective arrive at Mr. Harper's house and conduct another inspection. A woman finds a broken window and notices traces of blood. They take the blood for analysis and are almost sure that it was a murder. Doug comes to the pier to talk to a friend, but Carson says that the police came to him and he told them that Doug recently had a girlfriend. Doug gets angry at his friend and leaves. The sheriff asks Doug to come to the police station and give a statement, but Doug doesn't say anything interesting. He says that Mr. Harper often drank alcohol and smoked a lot. The detective threatens criminal liability and tries to scare the guy into telling the truth. Doug doesn't say anything. Doug returns to work and receives a text from Elena. He asks Carson to replace him and leaves to meet her. They meet at their secret location and Elena thanks Doug for helping her. She confesses her love to him and says that soon everything will end and they will be together. Doug suggests hiding their secret cell phones right here. He is also worried that the gardener will tell the police the whole truth. Doug returns home and sees the police. The detective takes his fingerprints and a saliva test. She asks Doug to go to the police station together. On the way, they stop at a gas station, and the sheriff leaves for a while. The detective begins to intimidate the guy and tells him that he is the main suspect. She says that she understands him and does not believe that he is a killer. The woman asks to tell the truth and says that Elena will not fulfill the promises she made to him. Doug gets out of the car and goes to the bar. He meets Carson and tells him the whole truth. He apologizes to him for not telling him earlier. Carson supports his friend and gives him advice. He says that if Doug tells everything to the sheriff, he won't go to jail. And Doug decides to tell the truth. He meets with the sheriff, but cannot tell the truth. The sheriff offers the guy a glass of water and then takes the glass for examination. The sheriff returns to the police station. The detective reports that they found the gardener. He was killed. Soon, the sheriff receives test results and realizes that Doug is involved in the murder. The sheriff goes to arrest him, but Doug manages to escape. He goes to a secret place to take the phone with evidence, but Elena is already there. She kisses the guy and says that she took the phone. Soon the police arrive and Elena pretends that Doug attacked her. The guy is detained and Elena leaves for the hotel. Doug asks the sheriff to give him a chance to prove that he is innocent. The sheriff knows that Doug is a good guy and he couldn't commit murder. He lets him go. Doug drives to the hotel and finds the phone. At this moment, a detective enters the room. Doug shows the woman the phone and convinces her that Elena is guilty of murder. The detective apprehends Elena, but she cannot let Doug go. She handcuffs him and calls the police. The women leave the room, and Doug notices a tattoo on the detective's leg.
She covered every base. Have you ever been with a girl before?
The detective and Elena get into the car, and Doug realizes that he was set up. But Yelena is grateful to him and leaves her phone so that he will not be imprisoned. 6 months later, Doug returns home. He was given a short prison term and correctional labor. Doug looks out the window and remembers Elena. At this moment, he thinks that if he could go back in time, he would not change anything.